Welcome back to Maximum News, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, as always, your friendly neighborhood Simpsons kin, Max Derrat, and I am joined, as always, by...
Sybsidian of the Triple S League.
Welcome back, and yeah, we got a lot of stuff to talk about, so we're just going to jump right in. Hellblade 2! Side, you know how much I've been waiting for this game for the last 7 years. It is my most anticipated game of 2024. I am almost done it. I'm down to just the last hour of it. Before I give my thoughts on it, I'll just give a little bit of a precursor history to like my experience with the first game. It came out back in 2017. I think I played it in 2019 for the first time. One of the most unique, polished, quality games I've ever played. I am of firm belief that is definitely one of the most underrated games of the last 10 years. Definitely in the top 10 alongside games like Prey 2017, Signalis. You can make an argument for Alan Wake 2, and a couple others that I probably can't think of off the top of my head. But yeah, it's a wonderful artistic exploration of what it's like to have a mental illness and psychosis, and using the world of Norse mythology to sort of paint what it's like going on internally in the exterior world. So using like the goddess Hela to represent the deepest darkness of one's soul. It's that sort of thing. And even though it's like only 5 or 6 hours to get through it, it's absolutely unforgettable. I love that game to pieces. So naturally, I was going to be very excited to see what Ninja Theory, the developers behind Hellblade, were going to do with Hellblade 2. Well, it's finally outside. It took forever for them to come out with it, but they finally came out with it yesterday. We're recording this on Wednesday, the 22nd, and came out on the 21st. So what did I think of it? It's good. I'm happy with it. I'm not entirely sure though it's where it should have been. There's some problems with the way that the gameplay is created and the puzzles in it. There's a number of things where I think they took a step back when it could have been pretty easy to take a step forward. But they do enough things right where they take huge leaps forward and then minute leaps forward to create an experience that I would say is worthwhile for people who are fans of the first Hellblade. And, you know, if you have it on Game Pass, I also highly recommend you check it out there as well. But unless you played the first Hellblade or have it, like, are able to purchase it for the asking price, which I think is like $49.99 US, or yeah, play it on Game Pass, I don't think it's something I could recommend to basically anybody else. So, specific details. Saib, it's very, very safe to say that these are the best graphics and the best auditory presentation that I've seen in a game since maybe The Last of Us Part 2. It's a trendsetter. It's like, oh my god, in about 2 or 3 years, I'm going to be able to play an open world game that looks like this. And, you know, you're only able to appreciate it for the 5 or 6 hours that Hellblade 2 takes place. But you just realize, oh my god, this is what Unreal Engine 5 is capable of. Who knows what this will look like with an open world game or an action game. The future looks bright in that regard. And, you know, if anybody's played the original Hellblade, they know how great the sound design is in that game. You know, having voices speak to you, because, you know, the main character is Senua, she's schizophrenic. You get a lot of that in this game, and it's used very, very effectively. And as for the narrative, this was the biggest question that I had going into Hellblade 2 is, well, the first Hellblade ended on such a pitch perfect note. Senua's journey into the darkest part of her soul was complete. Where do you go from there? Without spoiling anything, so the basic synopsis of the original game is that Senua was ostracized by her tribe because she had mental illness. And then she goes on this spiritual journey in order to be able to come to terms with it, more or less. So, you know, spoiler alert, she survives, which means she came to terms with it. And now it's a matter of, well, trying to rebuild her connection with her home and her culture, and also to establish her own legend. I don't think there was any way, now that I've played it, I don't think that there was any way that they could have made that part of Senua's story more compelling than the beginning, because it's not as emotionally intense or visually intense as the first game in any capacity. But they do the best that they can with where Senua's story would naturally go, and I hesitate to think of any way they could have done it better. Now, where they could have done things better, I think, is in terms of gameplay and in terms of puzzle design. Saib, the original Hellblade, you could reasonably call it a game, but it was as much an experience as it was a game. I don't know how to put it better than that. But like there were puzzles, there were combat sections in the original game, but it was more just about the presentation and the experience and just going on this journey with Senua than it was about playing it as a game. Well, with Hellblade 2, they put a greater emphasis on the experience part of it, and in a lot of ways seem to forget what they could have done to make it more like a game. Because basically, all the gameplay sections and all the puzzles are just repeats from the first game. It's the same type of puzzles, very little difference, and the difference that's there isn't enough to really consider it a huge leap forward in any stretch of the imagination. And in that respect, I think it's completely understandable why, if you look at some of the online discourse going around about this game, it's reasonable to understand why people are upset and disappointed, because I'm personally disappointed. But like I said just a moment ago, I do think that the game gets enough stuff right that it is worth experiencing if you were a fan of the original Hellblade. Senua is still awesome. She's a badass. There's some moments in this game that are just typical, pitch perfect metal, metal in the keenest sense of the word, and it's great. So whereas the original game for me was a consistent, you consistently got 8 out of 10 to 10 out of 10 moments in that game. With Hellblade 2, it's you're constantly switching between moments that are 6 out of 10 to 9 out of 10. So you never reach the heights of the original game, but there are a lot of moments of true visual, spiritual, emotional beauty. And who knows, maybe there might be a moment, because I still have one more hour to go towards the end of the game, and from what I understand, it's going to be a pretty big ending, where there could be a big 10 out of 10 moment. But as of right now, I would say that the game is good. I'm happy with it. I just wish, and I think that they could have done more. Anyways, Saib, I know I've asked you this, but I can't remember what you said. I think you said that you've wanted to play Hellblade, but you never did. Is that right?
No, I want to play Hellblade, but it hits a little too close to home.
Yeah.
So I do avoid it because of that reason.
Yeah. I will say I think a part of why I'm able to appreciate it more than some people is because it also hits home for me too, the mental illness aspects of it. And I'll say that even though it's not, I don't think those elements are done as well as they are in the original game, there are parts of it that are still done really well and do hit home. But yeah, I can understand why it hit too close to home. But maybe one day you'll experience the beauty of it and go on the journey, because it is life changing.
I do buy the products because I think it's something that is worthy of support.
Yeah.
And I'll get to my critique on that in a second.
Sure. Yeah, Ninja Theory, they really need our support right now. They're a very special studio, and I want them to continue to make games. But yeah, that's about all I have to say on Hellblade. I'm curious to know if any of you guys have played it. If you have any thoughts on it, we'd love to hear from you in the comment section below. Yeah, were you going to say something on Hellblade specifically, or is it just in relation to something else that we were going to talk about?
It's a critique on the on Microsoft for this and the advertising for this.
Oh God, yeah, it's been absolute trash. Where was it?
There has been, exactly. That's the question. Where has the advertising been for this game? I have seen zero advertising for this. I knew it was coming out this week, and I actually missed the launch because I just didn't even hear it. I didn't see it. I didn't see it on the Steam lists. I didn't see anything about it being out.
Yeah.
And
The only marketing I saw from this game were people on Twitter asking, why has there been no marketing for this game?
yeah, and it's been zero marketing for this. They had this you remember the announcement trailer for this that they
Was
did at the
epic.
Games Expo. It was so epic. And then since then, I had heard almost like I'm in the news. I'm literally surrounded by game news every single day, and there was so little being spoken about, so little being talked about, so little being put out there. And the fact that this was such a popular title when the first one came out and
Well,
was so good,
it
like
wasn't popular. It
yes,
was
again,
well
it wasn't.
received. Yeah.
Yeah, it was well received. Um, but yeah, it's just like where has this been? Like where's the like it seems so weird to have such a very popular game and then to have nobody pushing this. And I mean, I don't even I really don't get it, and I really think that this is I don't know if it's because they're afraid of the mental health issues attached to the narrative of the thing. I wonder if that's their issue, or if they're worried about it from some other perspective, and
Honestly,
that's why
dude,
they didn't get it out.
I think the problem is that it is a niche game. Because if you look at the way that the original game was received, I think it sold around 1 million copies. The peak all-time player count on Steam was around 5,000 for Hellblade right
Yeah,
now. Hellblade 2
I would
right
have
now,
thought.
it's about 4,200, so just slightly
Yeah,
below that. So how are you going to market the game unless you're doing a heavy push on the original game? And even
yeah.
then, how do you justify like pushing it unless it's huge on sale, yada yada yada. So I think
See,
that's part of it.
this is where the having the ability to do outside marketing, I think, is where they have really dropped the ball with this. And I think that um as a general concept, the idea of like pushing this out into non gamer places was probably the place where it had the most success. These big studios and platforms, and Sony and Microsoft, they're wanting to expand their gaming empires into other sectors, but nobody's taken this and sat down. Like, nobody from a marketing perspective has taken this game, sat down with one of the many fairly respected, I would say, as a general note, YouTube psychologists. Right? There's a handful of YouTube psychologists out
Oh
there that I think
yeah.
are actually really good, and they do talk about games like this, but they don't advertise games like this. Now, there is a bit of a qualm about, like, well, is that something that they should actually take money for, or like how would you broach that subject? And this
Right.
is where I think that there's some panic as far as like advertisers to actually, like, even YouTube to take advertisements for this. I think they're all standing in a room looking at each other with like really nervous eyes, going, well, we can't really market this because it talks about mental health issues, and that's not something that you can market. It's like, no, I think you can.
There
Like,
are ways. Like, I mean,
yeah.
they should have consulted us.
There's 100 ways to consult this, to get this out there. There's 100 YouTube channels out there right now that
You
have
don't. Okay,
large.
look. You don't even have to emphasize the mental health thing. The
Mhm.
whole setting. Why did I pronounce it like a British person? The whole setting of the game is awesome. Like a Viking woman who's a badass going and contending with the Norwegian forces of hell. That's awesome. And you got like this really metal soundtrack and this really gorgeous graphics. That's how you market it. And then like you're not false advertising if you present it that way. If you do that and then people come and play and they get this really great narrative that is about mental health, then that's, you come for the great presentation and you stay for the emotional story and the characters. That's how you do it. Easy enough. Anyway, that's the whole thing going on about Hellblade. I'm sure because of the way that Xbox and Microsoft have been handling studios like Ninja Theory recently. We recently talked about Tango Gameworks, Arcane Austin, and how they got shut down. I'm pretty sure we're going to have a little bit more to talk about in regards to Hellblade and Ninja Theory over the coming weeks, so stay tuned for that. But let's move on. Speaking about companies buying out other conglomerates, IGN, which is sort of a internet meme and has been for the last few years because of just how corporate they tend to be. Some of their coverage recently has been pretty good, but just the whole too much water thing, that was a thing. But recently they did something that is a little bit concerning. Side, this is you, man. Go ahead, tell people what's been going on.
Yeah, so IGN has done a surgical, I don't know if it's a master maneuver because we don't know whether it's going to work yet or not. But just generally speaking, they have done a masterful stroke as far as an attack here. And what they've done is they're killing off a bunch of their competition and pruning themselves in a way that I think is actually pretty brilliant. I was planning on watching Bellular's video on this because he was talking about this, but it just came out, so I didn't have time. But I was curious as to what he would say coming at it from this perspective, and I think his perspective is that they are hurting gaming, and I would say that or at least that was the title of his thing. So I'm gonna run on the fact that him saying that. That parallels. Why do I mention that? Because it parallels well with what every other gaming site is saying about this right now. They're all saying the same thing, and that is that, oh, this is hurting gaming. But why is it hurting gaming? Because they've brought on these studios, they bought out these studios, and it's a lot of them. Sorry, not studios, publication rags or
right. Yeah, let's go with that.
Websites, whatever. And what they're doing, it's quite clear. Like, it's really clear. Everybody is crying about it right now, as far as like the people involved in this kind of thing. And that is that they're buying these places to basically gut them, fire most of the staff, and then essentially, not literally, but essentially just put a giant like, hey, if you're used to coming to this website, here's a forward over to the IGN article. Right? But I don't know if that's exactly how they're going to do it. That's what I mean. Like, it's what they're going to be doing is definitely they're going to be firing a lot of people. And definitely what they're going to be doing is they're going to be walking into these places and comparing their own place. Because again, IGN just can't fire a handful of people without paying them a lot of money. But if they can lay them off, they pay less money. See how that works? Is if you walk into a room as a boss and you fire that dude, and that dude, you're going to be paying out the nose depending on what country you're in. But if you go to the government or you go to the labor board and say, oh, here's our finances, we're in the red, business just isn't turning around, so we're going to have to do layoffs. Can we please not pay out these exorbitant things as if we fired them? We'll give them a nice little severance thingy, but it's not quite the same, right? That famous scene from The Office, for spoiling the end of the Office series that
finished
like a decade or more ago.
Right.
So at the end, the two Jim and Pam, they're going to quit, and what's his name again? The crazy one.
Oh, Steve Carell. I don't know what his name.
No, not not him. The other one. The
I don't know,
farmer.
man. I never watched much of The
What?
Office. Yeah,
oh my goodness.
I've watched a few episodes. It's really good. It's just something that I need to sit down.
So this boss who he's always butted heads with Jim, he says, no, you can't quit. You're fired. And they're like, "Hey, why would you do that?" It's like, "Because you get more severance out of it." Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Because they've mended their relationship, and he's like giving them a good send off. It's like that's the thing that you need to think about. What's going on here is that they're not wanting to fire a lot of these people. They're wanting to lay them off. How do you lay off a bunch of people that have been with your company for a really long time? Merge with another company, and then you do a layoff of people who now you have 3 people doing the job that only 1 or 2 people need to do.
Yeah.
You see how that works?
Mhm.
That's what's going on here. At least that's what, again, everybody is complaining about. Everybody's saying is going to happen. We don't know if it's going to happen yet because it hasn't happened yet. We don't know if this is going to save IGN and bump up their numbers and quadruple the traffic coming into their sites and seeing their ads. We have no idea whether any of that is actually going to work right now at all. We have no clue.
I
But we
think it,
do know that
yeah.
they're going to do something to to trim the excess, to prune off the excess of this stuff that a lot of these employees that they know that there's and I've talked with the I talked back and forth with the guy who owns Rock Paper Shotgun,
Really?
and he's a bit of a dick. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
He blocked me on Twitter.
Ah.
All I said was that there was, and to instigate that, all I had said is that I feel that there, it's like, hey, I have a lead on a bit of a story about news publications, kind of like, they're kind of like they're taking essentially bribes and patting each other on the back to get stuff. It wasn't about him. It was about a completely different thing, a completely different
Mhm.
topic. And he's like, yeah, and I bet you're gonna ask if I punch my wife too. And then he blocked me. And it's like, dude, calm down. I wasn't like, I'm not a, I wasn't trying to gotcha. I was literally saying, hey, here's a story you might be interested in.
Mm.
But that's the way that these sites have been operating for a long time. Is there's a lot of these sites have been operating in a way for a long time where they know without a doubt that there's a bunch of people on their staff that they're paying that don't make them any money. In fact, they've been costing them money and costing them viewers for a really, really long time.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like, oof, what do we do with that? That is very interesting.
Mm-hmm. Well, you get bought out, and then the problem goes away because IGN will fire those people.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So now they could fire a lot of people or lay them off rather because they have an excess of a whole bunch of people, or they can literally just maybe they're not even going that route. Maybe they literally are going to be like, okay, you're fired, you're fired, you're fired, you're fired, and we're keeping the top like 3 people.
Yeah.
So like, and that happens a lot. We've had personal experience with a company just recently that that went under, and we had done some work for them, and the company that bought them out, that the first company that showed up said, okay, we're buying the top like 5% of stuff, and our stuff happened to be included in that because that's how good we are. So that was a really like potential like that for us is like a like yay, look
Yeah.
at how good of a job that we did. Is they went in, they looked at the numbers, and they said top 5%, or I think it might have been top 1%, but we were in that list. So they were like, okay, that's great. And so that's something that looking at that, you need to, we're thinking like, okay, well, if this is going on, then, what is, what more are they going to do in this regard? And I bet you it's going to be the exact same thing. They're going to keep the top 1 to 5% of performers, fire everybody else. And then they basically are going to like go ham on a new strategy of some kind.
Yeah. As for whether or not the new strategy will pan out, I don't know. I imagine that this will work for them well in the short term, but I do think that along with traditional gaming news websites, people do tend to get a lot of their gaming information from pundits on websites like YouTube or people that have their own sites. And people are just going to go over to them instead of just, I don't know, do it like looking at everything that IGN puts out. But we'll see. Yeah, so I suppose a long in advance rest in peace to the likes of GamesIndustry.biz, Eurogamer, Rock Paper Shotgun, VG247, and Dicebreaker, because those are the ones that got bought up, in case you guys were wondering. All right. Let's move on to this next story. So, Sybe, it is, like I said, it is May 22nd that we're recording this. So that gives us 9 days, carry the two. That gives us 16 days until Summer Game Fest, which is on June 7th. So 2 weeks and 2 days until we get the big sort of E3-esque showcase, even though we don't have E3 anymore. I do anticipate that, like the last year and the year before that, that the major companies will have, well, I don't know. I can't remember exactly what's been going on during COVID and when people had their showcases. But, it'll be like last year where Sony will have their own showcase and Xbox will have their own showcase. Maybe Bethesda will have their own showcase. Sorry about the noise outside. But we don't know when those are yet. But we do know when they're having theirs. It's on June 7th. And we do know, because they announced just a few days ago, who's going to be a part of the showcase. I'm not going to go down the entire list. Obviously, you're going to have like Electronic Arts, Capcom, Amazon Games, like the major players, but along with a whole bunch of AA and indie developers that are working on it. I'll just cite the ones that sort of stood out to me that I'm really excited about. And it's a short list. Unfortunately, there's not a lot there, but I do anticipate there's going to be some interesting stuff being shown and a couple of surprises. First of all, I think the big one that I and a lot of people are really curious about is what is 2K going to be showing us? I'm serious. Sab, I don't know if you saw this, but 2K did make an announcement that on June 7th, they're going to be announcing the next installment in one of their, quote, most beloved franchises. Now, in my mind, that could only mean three things: Borderlands, Mafia, or BioShock. Now, of those three, what do you think is the most likely?
Well, it's not Borderlands, that's for sure.
Why do you say that?
Because they don't own them anymore.
Well, no, they published them.
They don't publish them anymore either.
What are you talking about? Really?
Yeah.
I'm seeing everybody talking about
Gearbox got bought out. As far as I know, that buyout, they went to the Embracer Group. The Embracer Group is their own publisher. They're not going to let 2K publish them. But then they got sold off from them. And I forget who bought them out recently, but as far as I know, as far as I'm fairly certain, that wasn't back to 2K. I might be wrong on that.
Hold on, I just got to get past this stupid reject all cookies thing. Okay, so an article from February of 2021, Gearbox says it will continue to work with 2K on Borderlands after its sale.
That was 2021. Lots changed from there.
Right, but I'm not seeing anything else.
Actually, no, sorry. Embracer has sold Gearbox and Borderlands back to Take-Two for $460 million. Okay, so I missed that. That was back in March that happened.
So with that in mind,
I guess they sold it off. Then they were going to be like, hey, we're not going to do this. And then they came back to it. That's hilarious.
It's just that bloody
Embracer lost a lot of money on that. That was I see that. So they bought them for like 600 some odd million, then sold them for 460 some odd million.
Yeah.
Okay, so in that case, I guess they are back. Are they going to be releasing a new game? Enough time has transitioned that they could. Mm-hmm. It's been a while since we had a mainline entry, so
it was 7 years. Yeah, it's been 7 years between. It was 7 years between Borderlands 2 and 3, and it's been 5 years since Borderlands 3. So it makes sense, I would say. You know what? If I were to put money on something, I would probably say Borderlands, especially with the release of the movie coming out. I'm sure they want to try and capitalize on that because that's what everybody's trying to do with their gaming IPs, is to try and make them multimedia, to try and build off of them, although I don't have much faith that the movie's going to help them very much. But yeah, I would say it's probably Borderlands 4. We do know that BioShock 4 is being worked on. It's just how far along.
It could, and again, the question is like, well, how much time has gone into the development? Are they going to do an early announcement? What's going to happen with that? And then I kind of feel that so there's positive way and a negative way of them launching the next Borderlands game here before the movie, because it gets a bunch of traction and everybody talking about it. Then they all go to the movie. That is if the movie is going to be good, which I don't think it's going to be. They haven't had their core like good writing team for a while, and for the record, they never actually like they only had it for one game release, and there was only one brilliant guy who did a lot of the really great writing in Borderlands 2, but he has since moved on, so has like everybody else, and everybody forgets that the first initial Borderlands was the story was how do you say hot garbage in a nice way?
Just tepid. I don't know.
Yeah, it was tepid at best.
Mhm.
And again, it's like I don't like them now. Obviously, we had a lot of we had a big hubbub with them a few years ago. I don't actually cover them at all anymore. It's one of the reasons why I didn't know off the top of my head who owned them,
Mhm.
is because a few years ago they made wild accusations, came after several YouTubers, got several, at least one of them kicked off of the platform completely for talking about stuff that was essentially their fault. And it was completely unneeded because these were their biggest fans. And I came out when the whole thing happened with Randy and
Yeah.
his stuff that happened, and I came out in defense of him and I walked through it very logically. I'm like, he is an eccentric person, but he's not the devil, which so many people were saying and claiming. So yeah, at this point, I don't know enough to say for sure. I would think that it's most likely going to be Borderlands, because enough time has passed and they haven't really announced anything, and they have gone back and forth on that. So if the studio was in shambles, do I think that they would have sold them back for 460 million? No, I kind of doubt it. If yeah, Embracer had the perfect opportunity to do something big with Borderlands, and they obviously missed the boat on that. So however that stands out, there's been enough time transition now that they I mean, all the paperwork's been done from the sale back to them since March of this year.
Yeah.
So at this point, now would be a good time to do a big announcement. But we've got Red Dead, we've got like you said, the other big B one.
Red
These
Dead. No, you mean Mafia.
the what?
Mafia. Red Dead is Rockstar.
Oh,
Yeah. Mafia is the 2K
yeah,
franchise that everybody
the
wants to see Mafia 4.
the Mafia one. Didn't they do the isn't there the Bully one? Isn't that
No, Bully's Rockstar.
oh again it's Rockstar.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're both owned by Take-Two, so I understand the
Yeah.
confusion. But we do know that there is something Bioshock related being worked on at Netflix.
Yeah.
So I just remember that. So you know what? It might be a coin toss. I'd say it's either something. Yeah,
I'd say right now it's either Bioshock or it's Borderlands.
Right. Here's my prediction. They're going to announce Borderlands 4 and like give a really decently flashy trailer for it, and then they're going to tease something Bioshock related. Maybe it's Bioshock 4, maybe it's like a Bioshock 1 remake, something like that. But we'll see. All right, a couple other ones. Bokeh Game Studio. This is the one I'm most excited about. Obviously, it's going to be Slitterhead. That was the game that was announced a couple of years back. It's being worked on by the same guy who made the original Silent Hill. And, it's also being composed by the guy who composed all the great Silent Hill music, Akira Yamaoka. The guy who originally made it is a guy named Kichiro Toyama. He also did Siren, which is very underrated, and he also did Gravity Rush. And I'm really, really curious to see what he does with Slitterhead. Focus Entertainment, I want to see more stuff from Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2. And then Epic Game Studios, I know it's sort of a long shot, but I know they're publishing Playdead's next game, as well as Gen Design's next game. And in case you guys don't know, Playdead are the ones that made Limbo and Inside, and it's been a minute since we've heard anything from them. 8 years since Inside came out, can you believe it? And Gen Design are is the team that's led by Fumito Ueda. He made Eco, Shadow of the Colossus, and The Last Guardian, and I'm desperate to see what the hell he's working on right now. But I don't know. I don't have. I'm trying to keep my anticipation really low because if I have to wait any longer for those games, I'm gonna die because it's just not good for my heart. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't really have huge high hopes for the Summer Game Fest. I'll watch it. We'll cover it, and I'm sure there'll be other nice surprises that show up. But that's pretty much it. Saib, anything that you're looking forward to in particular? Anything you expect?
Um, so there's so many rumors going around about Fallout stuff right now,
Right.
but I don't think it's going to be at this because they have, unless they do like some kind of a teaser that they drop in the Summer Games Fest, just like this teaser of like something new, and then they show like the vault door closing, and then that's it, and then it's like stay tuned for the announcement later in the fall at the Bethesda Game Showcase with Microsoft. It's like um that would be crazy and perfect timing, but it wouldn't give us any information to run off of. So I think the goal here will be not to do that. Other than that, there is a bunch of smaller projects that I'm interested in and kind of like key on like seeing. I am a little interested to see how Starfield's new update is going to come out, how that's going to roll out,
Sure.
if
Yeah.
that's going to roll out, if that's going to be good.
Right. Yeah, just in case anybody's like thinking this already while listening to us talk, and Bethesda isn't a part of the initial announcement, but it isn't impossible for them to show up. They did make a part of the initial announcement that
Well,
there are more studios
Microsoft's
to be
yeah,
announced.
Microsoft's going to say something, right?
Yeah,
Like we know Microsoft's going to say something, and Microsoft is going to be putting its best foot forward to try and like get people interested in the product. So
yeah. There's a
yeah,
bit of a changing of the narrative that they really have to get to work on at the moment, and putting, like you said, their best foot forward with Fallout, which is hot right now, makes sense. Yeah. Anything else?
um, yeah. No, other than that, like I'm going into this year probably a little blind, because I want to see kind of like what's being announced on the announce days. So we'll see how that goes.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, we're gonna cover it, guys. Just a couple more weeks to wait, and from like stuff that I've been hearing, we might actually get a Sony showcase in less than 2 weeks. So stay tuned for that, and we're gonna be speculating on that as the time leads up to that. All right, moving on to this. Oh God, this is it fair to say that this is sort of like the big news of the past week that everybody was just up in arms about?
Yeah,
Yeah.
for different reasons.
So what is the deal with Assassin's Creed? Who am I, Jerry Seinfeld? Assassin's Creed Shadows. What has
Yeah.
been the controversy surrounding that side?
So the controversy has been twofold, and I cannot emphasize this enough. It is literally two separate things that people are upset about.
Mhm.
The first thing and the most obvious thing is black guy is the main character. In
In
Japan,
Japan, yeah.
black guy is the main character. Very odd as a general choice for this. Um, not not super odd, but obviously you're missing a humongous opportunity to like grow with your Japanese audience. And most people would be okay with that, right? Like, it's it's the experience of playing in that part of the world that you play from a character who has that perspective of the world. And that's totally fine and would have been totally fine. Now that's the complaint that I think the majority of people are saying when they criticize Black Guy being the main character in the Japanese historical version of Assassin's Creed, which is trying to play into the some level of history. The guy that's being played, uh,
It's a
I'll
real
lay,
historical figure. Right.
he is a real historical figure. Was he an actual samurai? That is sort of like he
Disputed?
fought with and beside some actual samurai, and he was a retainer for a dude, and those retainers did have historical references for being combat capable. So obviously he would have been using the tools at his disposal. So yes, and we have to point out that this isn't the first time this historical character has been featured in samurai themed stuff. The several, I believe it's several anime
Tons.
have used him as a reference material essentially for their stuff, which is that again, beautiful, good, nothing bad with that. Therefore, I think that the people complaining about this, they don't really need to, because this has been established. In fact, the only thing I would say about this in that category is that the Assassin's Creed and Ubisoft is clearly just pandering, in the sense of like taking something that's already been popularized and just kind of focusing in on that to potentially make other people more happy about this. And
Right.
I think that writing was probably a little poor. I think that my critique of almost all of Ubisoft games is add more protagonists.
Mm.
Give us more choices. This is a perfect opportunity to roll out 3, 4, or 5 main protagonists, just like Baldur's Gate did. Is like having this option to play as a wide selection of characters, and then to interact with the other character that you don't play as. Like, to me, that's just a win, 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 because you could have had you could have had a Korean guy, you could have had a Chinese guy, you could have had or girl or whatever, and then you have this guy, and then you add another like Japanese guy, and then some women, because that's really cool. And then, don't just focus on the samurai aspect. You could focus on an archer aspect, because I feel that there's so much like more room for like a ranged assassin in the Assassin's Creed universe.
Hmm.
And again, with the legendary bow skills of Japanese women in historical context, that is an amazing opportunity that they were just like, you know what? We're just going to pass on that. We're just going to pass on that. So that gets my criticism for that aspect of like who's playing who, that kind of thing. Is this woke? Is this based? Is this woke? And the arguments about that kind of stuff. That wasn't my issue.
Yeah.
I have another issue that's nuclear level. I'm not going to touch this game, and I think Ubisoft is a pile of scum who I will never, ever, ever support their games again. And that is not because of that issue, and I need to make that clear.
Yeah.
The player characters, my opinion is always add more protagonists, because it just literally makes sense. Give me the ability to create my own protagonist and play a story.
You've been very consistent about that.
It's extremely consistent for a long time. But this particular issue makes me really upset. And that is that they went to an expert. Okay, they went to an expert. I do not want to butcher their name. I believe I could say their first name, which is Sachi. So there's a professor of an associate professor of Japanese literature and culture that has been brought in to help advise on the creation of this game. And they came out with this article talking all about how this woman has come and done this. Now this is how I've been trying to like make sure I could phrase this the right way, because if we say the wrong words in this, we'll get in trouble with YouTube. Ubisoft went and found probably the most I cannot think of a person who would be more nuclear fire to bring in to consult on your game than somebody who looks at crimes that adults do to young children that is both violent and hanky-panky in the worst possible ways. And there's a group of people who go, yeah, you know what? That's just cool. And we want to accept that now. And we want to like look back at like historical versions where this was done and realize how, Nero, right, in Rome, like, him and all of his much older pagan priest friends who did terrible things to him and obviously turned him into a psychopath who ended up burning down Rome. Um, we should look at that and say, oh, isn't that beautiful? So hopefully you get what I'm talking about. If not, I'm not going to elaborate anymore on it. But this person, huge proponent of that kind of lifestyle. And that has made me just, I don't think I have the stomach to ever touch another Ubisoft game ever again.
Yeah.
Because this is so far off the mark. As a survivor, as somebody who's gone through that kind of stuff, to have anybody sit around and say, "Oh yeah, this is just, it's totally fine. It's just all how you look at it." Just it makes me so angry. And I feel like the hundreds of years of violation of when this stuff was common to nowadays, and then you get somebody who's like, yes, this was beautiful and this was obviously totally cool, is like, just no, absolutely no. Why would you pay money to somebody who thinks this way and openly states this and writes books on it? It's just
yeah.
Her book is titled Tales of Idolized Boys, Male and Male Love in Medieval Japanese Narratives.
Yeah.
So that is a title that you can buy on Amazon Books.
Please don't.
And that is please don't. This isn't a critique. It's not a critique. It's a romantic depiction of something that happened between priests and young boys in the medieval era in Japan.
Well, just obviously, anytime any sort of gender theory is like taken seriously in any context, it doesn't tend to lead to anything like constructive or positive. So in that respect, and yeah, that element I wasn't aware of. I wasn't going to buy this game anyway, but that just made me really certain that I wasn't. Yeah, as far as the black protagonists look, personally, I don't care. I just, most of the time, I just want a good story, regardless of the person's ethnicity or whatever. But I can understand, because of how global the Assassin's Creed franchise is, that you want to have stories that are told in these parts of the world have characters that represent, like, that are ethnically of that culture. I get that. I don't care, but I get it. So choosing to do it with Yasuke, while I have no doubt that it's really not that big a deal. I can understand why people are like, well, this game is taking place in Japan. Tell a story about somebody who's actually ethnically Japanese, just like, I don't know, the people in Assassin's Creed Odyssey were ethnically Greek. Like, that's fine. But yeah, normally I would say I don't care, just as long as the story's good. But because it's an Ubisoft game, I don't really hold out much hope. But yeah, those are just my thoughts. And it's going to be interesting when the game finally releases.
One of the stories that I wish that they would depict, and now I don't wish that Ubisoft predicts this anymore, but Olga of Kiev is probably one of the greatest like medieval, like, badass stories ever.
Yeah.
And would be so cool for somebody to turn that into a game. I want it to be a game. I want it to be a TV show. I want it to be a movie, because that is one of the most badass stories to ever exist in political assassination level stories, and it's just great. So there's so much room for people to catch these stories, just like what we had with other stories around the World War II things that was EA took and just ran with in a bizarre and stupid direction.
Yeah.
It's like I'm okay with alternate time stuff. Big fan of Command and Conquer back in the day, where it was a parallel time story where where they went back and they changed history, and then that created the Command and Conquer universe. And I'm not opposed to them telling different unique stories, but there's so many cool unique stories, and then there's so many experts that are better to pull from than somebody who's got
Yeah.
obvious problems. And why you would pay somebody with that is just it's so bizarre. They had so many. They could have involved any of the great writers of any of those animes that covered his story, and had them convey the historical importance of the character, and then pitch it, but then to kind of shut out the other people in that. It's so weird. It's so weird.
Well, that's
So
Ubisoft for
yeah,
you.
yeah, it's
Anyways,
Ubisoft. Yeah.
guys, that does it for this episode of Maximum News. Thank you so much for joining us. If you have any thoughts on any or all the topics that Saib and I talked about today, we'd love to hear from you in the comment section below. Whether you agree or disagree with our thoughts, if you have any criticism, we'd love to hear it. Just please keep it civil. Saib, thank you as always for doing the show with me. Do you have anything you want to say before we finish?
Yeah, just we've got some stuff upcoming. We did a big question video yesterday. If you want to shout that it out, everywhere you can, where there's Fallout fans, be my guest. It is the question of who started the war. And with that video went up yesterday, so it'll be 2 days ago. Please check out our YouTube channel. Check that video out. We go into an hour and a half of deeply diving into who started the war and why.
Nice.
And what the motivations were, and who were among the people who had the ability to do so. And it's more than just what the show or the games have actually stated. There's a bunch more that we dig into. So yeah, check that out, please, and thank you.
Sounds pretty thorough. I'll probably watch it tomorrow when I'm eating my breakfast. And you guys can find me just on all the regular forms of social media, just at Max Derrat. I'll put links to that in the description box below. Thanks, guys, and until we do this again next week, I want to remind you, as always and as per usual, stay yellow.
Goodbye.